Elijah Royce's phone erupted the moment his flight landed. Missed calls, stacking up like a countdown. 3 texts from his foreman. "Boss, you better get back here. It's all gone." They tore it all down. He left his luggage on the carousel. Within 90 seconds, his truck was roaring east on Highway 26. The speedometer passed 90. He didn't notice. At the farm road, the gate was broken open, the no trespassing sign dangling by one nail. Through the gap, nightfall painted the hop yard in jagged silhouettes of wrecked trellises.
The contract. If the trellises are gone, there's no harvest this year. Anheuser-Busch won't wait.
He cut the engine. Outside, the silence was worse than the noise. No wind, just the stink of diesel and churned soil, boots crunching on gravel. Elijah passed through the gate and into what used to be his living.
Without those hops, the supply agreement is void. Everything I built, gone with the trellises.
6 months earlier, the same ground had been a cathedral of green, 50 acres of towering trellises, each one heavy with cones destined for America's largest brewery. Every vine carried a tag, Anheuser-Busch, proprietary variety. The contract was ironclad. He'd signed the exclusive supply agreement 2 years prior, the kind of deal hop farmers dream about. It guaranteed buyback of his entire harvest at a premium for 5 years. But not everyone on the hill saw a landmark of agricultural pride. Samantha Villiers, HOA chair of the neighboring Ridgeline Heights, saw an eyesore.
18 feet of galvanized steel and tangled vines. An industrial blight on our residential viewshed.
For her, those trellises weren't agriculture. They were an intrusion on the neighborhood's so-called character. For Elijah, the trellises were his livelihood. For Samantha, they were a personal offense she intended to erase. It didn't take long for Samantha Villiers to weaponize that disdain. At the first HOA meeting of the spring, she stood before the board with a prepared statement.
Those trellises are an industrial overreach, 18 feet of rusting steel cages that drag down every property value on this hill.
Elijah received the meeting minutes by certified mail 3 days later. Purpose: address visual blight caused by commercial hop farming within Ridgeline Heights viewshed.
She's trying to frame my farm as a zoning violation, not a working agricultural operation.
Samantha didn't stop at the boardroom. She walked the cul-de-sacs that weekend, flyers in hand.
If we don't act now, our home values could plummet 20%. Who would buy a house next to an industrial site? We have the votes to push this through, but I need every one of you at the next meeting.
The neighborhood fractured. Longtime residents uneasy, but new homeowners terrified of falling equity.
She's not just complaining. She's building a mob.
2 weeks later, Elijah flew to Yakima for the annual hop convention, leaving the farm in his foreman's hands.
A few days away won't hurt. The crew knows what to do.
Samantha Villiers called an emergency HOA meeting within an hour of his departure.
Tonight, we vote on the trellis removal initiative. I've secured a licensed crew and a competitive bid. We can start by sunrise.
The motion passed 11-2, with proxies she'd collected door to door. By 6 the next morning, a flatbed carrying a bulldozer and a 6-man crew rolled through the farm gate. The foreman's calls to Elijah went straight to voicemail, phone off in the convention hall. He typed with shaking fingers. "Boss, you better get back here. It's all gone. They tore it all down." In Yakima, Elijah glanced at his screen between breakout sessions and felt his stomach drop.
That can't be. The gate was locked. They'd need a court order, unless...
Daylight exposed the full brutality. Not a single trellis remained upright. The hop bines lay tangled in the mud like burial shrouds. Cracked irrigation pipes gushed into craters where the roots had been torn out. The soil reeked of diesel and ripped chlorophyll.
50 acres. 200 tons of hops, gone. And the only buyer I had.
He pulled out his phone and dialed the number he had on speed dial for 2 years. His procurement officer at Anheuser-Busch.
It's Elijah Royce. Someone bulldozed every trellis overnight. The proprietary varietals are destroyed. We have no harvest.
The call was transferred immediately to Mark Jensen, Anheuser-Busch's senior litigation counsel.
"Mr. Royce, you are telling me our entire Cascade supply is lying in the dirt and we're 2 weeks from brewing season? Say that again.
Every single trellis. The HOA chair called it a visual harmony correction. She doesn't know what she's done.
Jensen didn't waste time on sympathy. He pulled the master supply agreement and started marking breach clauses. Within the hour, a corporate jet was fueled, and Anheuser-Busch's most aggressive legal team had a new target. The black SUVs rolled in before dawn the next day. 3 Anheuser-Busch executives stepped into the mud wearing suits that cost more than most harvests. They moved through the wreckage with clipboards and tablets, cataloging every broken trellis, every uprooted plant.
They're not looking at a farm. They're looking at a contract breach.
One of them held a copy of the master supply agreement, highlighting the liquidated damages clause. On the hill, Samantha Villiers opened her laptop and began typing the Ridgeline Heights Gazette. Headline: Visual harmony restored. Trellis eyesore removed for good.
Finally, a neighborhood that looks the way it should.
She attached a photo of the flattened yard, taken from her porch, and hit send. The newsletter reached every inbox in Ridgeline Heights by noon. None of them realized the HOA had just declared war on a multinational brewery with a legal department that never lost. In a 43rd floor conference room, Mark Jensen assembled the litigation team around a table, littered with aerial photos and contract pages.
Section 14. Paragraph 3. Intentional interference with supply operations triggers personal liability for the directing party. This wasn't just trespass. This was an orchestrated hit on a proprietary supply chain. We don't sue the HOA, we sue the chair.
He circled the clause in red and pushed it across the table.
The board voted, but she was the architect. Without her, those dozers never roll. She's personally liable. Get me everything on Samantha Villiers, property records, trusts, any hidden assets. If she thought this was about landscaping, she's about to learn it's about money.
The associates scattered, and Jensen sat alone with the contract, calculating.
They destroyed 2 years of proprietary harvest. The penalty clause will bury them.
By morning, the complaint draft was on his desk.
File it in federal court, personal jurisdiction for Samantha Villiers. No settlement, no warning.
Before the papers landed, Elijah drove to Samantha's house. He owed her no warning, but wanted to see her face. He rang the bell, and she answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes.
Those trellises fed Anheuser-Busch. You just triggered a breach that will bring their legal team down on you.
Anheuser-Busch, please. This is a neighborhood matter. You are just trying to scare me.
This isn't about curb appeal. It's about millions in contract losses. They'll come for you personally.
Let them send a letter. I've fought uglier battles. Now, get off my porch before I call the sheriff.
She laughed, shrill and dismissive, and shut the door.
She thinks she can brush off a corporation like she brushes off neighbors.
Elijah walked away, his resolve hardening with every step. Samantha sat back at her desk, satisfied that the farmer wouldn't bother her again. The complaint was filed in federal court at 9:02 a.m. By 11 a.m., a process server knocked on Samantha Villiers' door. She signed for the envelope with a smirk, but the smirk vanished when she read the caption, Anheuser-Busch, Inc. versus Samantha Villiers, et al.
This can't be right. They're suing me personally.
Her attorney, who'd never handled anything beyond property line disputes, turned ashen as he read the complaint. Prayer for relief cited willful destruction, breach of contract, and punitive damages.
They're treating me like a corporation raider.
Mark Jensen received confirmation of the filing within minutes.
It's done. Now we bury them in discovery.
Back at Ridgeline Heights, Samantha sat alone in her living room, the complaint open on her lap.
Every dollar of my equity is on the line.
The next morning, the regional newspaper broke the story. Headline: Brewery sues HOA chair for $42 million over hop field destruction. Samantha read the article at her breakfast table, the coffee growing cold. Her hand trembled as she lifted the cup.
42 million? That's not a lawsuit. That's a life sentence.
By noon, the Ridgeline Heights emergency meeting room was overflowing with irate homeowners, each clutching a newspaper. They were shouting before the meeting even began. One man stood, jabbing his finger at the headline, his voice cutting through the noise. He accused Samantha of lying to them all.
I acted on behalf of this community. The board voted. No one foresaw this.
But the board members refused to meet her eyes, and the homeowners unleashed a storm of contempt.
They're throwing me to the wolves after everything I did for this neighborhood.
The meeting adjourned in chaos. The HOA fractured, and Samantha walked out alone, the newspaper still crumpled in her hand. While the HOA self-destructed, Mark Jensen's discovery team was sifting through Samantha Villiers' financial records.
Follow every transaction. If she was hiding something, it'll be in the money.
An associate flagged a brokerage purchase made 6 weeks earlier. A stake in a small Oregon craft brewery called Hop Vault.
6 weeks before the trellises came down. That's not coincidence.
They pulled the certificate, Samantha Villiers, 1,000 shares, purchased the day after she filed the HOA complaint. Certificate reads, Hop Vault Craft Brewing Company, registered owner Samantha Villiers.
She destroyed our supply chain, then positioned herself to profit from a competitor. That's textbook commercial sabotage.
Jensen's team pulled up Hop Vault's business records. The brewery specialized in hop-forward IPAs, exactly the varieties Elijah grew.
This isn't a nuisance lawsuit anymore. It's a federal case.
By midnight, an amended complaint was drafted, citing intentional interference, fraud, and seeking treble damages. The next morning, Mark Jensen forwarded the stock certificate and the amended complaint to the Federal Trade Commission. At the FTC's Portland field office, a senior investigator read the file and made a call.
This isn't just a civil dispute. The timing of the stock purchase and the destruction aligns with commercial interference under Section 5.
Within hours, Vivian Cruz, an agent known for tackling commodity manipulation cases, was assigned. 2 days later, a black sedan pulled up to Samantha Villiers' house.
Mrs. Villiers, I am Agent Vivian Cruz with the Federal Trade Commission. You are ordered to produce all records related to Hop Vault Craft Brewing and your HOA communications.
Samantha stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the folded subpoena.
The FTC? This can't be real. They think I am a criminal mastermind.
Her hand shook as she took the document. The world seemed to shrink around her.
Failure to comply will result in contempt charges. You'd best call your lawyer.
Within a week, a federal judge froze every account bearing Samantha Villiers' name, personal and brokerage, citing a high risk of asset dissipation. Her brokerage statement read, account frozen, balance, $0, pending FTC investigation.
They've locked everything. I can't even pay my own lawyer.
The HOA called another emergency meeting. When Samantha tried to enter, the new board chair blocked the door, her face set.
You can't shut me out. I built this neighborhood's value with my own hands.
But the door closed, and she heard the motion pass through the thin walls, a unanimous vote to remove her from the board and disavow all her actions. She drove home in silence, her hands trembling on the wheel. In her living room, she drew the curtains and sat in the dark, a glass of wine untouched beside her.
They've abandoned me. My house, my reputation, every dime, gone. And for what? A view.
For the first time, Samantha Villiers understood the difference between power and consequence. The deposition room was painted institutional gray. Elijah placed his calloused hands on the table and swore the oath without a tremor. Samantha's attorney, a thin man with a nervous blink, framed his first question as a bureaucratic mix-up.
Those trellises represented 2 years of exclusive proprietary varietal growth. The mix-up cost $42 million, and my contract.
The court reporter's machine did not click. The defense lawyer flipped through his notes, searching for a way to soften the answer.
When I told Samantha Villiers what she'd done, she laughed. She said she'd fought uglier battles.
The air in the room changed. The corporate lawyers on the plaintiff's side exchanged glances. They knew. Samantha's attorney requested a short recess. His co-counsel had already closed her laptop. Elijah remained seated, watching them. Every answer he'd given was unrehearsed and unrecoverable.
I don't expect an apology, but I do expect the court to see what was taken from me.
When the deposition ended, the defense team did not meet Elijah's eyes. The case was no longer about property lines. 3 days later, the settlement conference convened in a sterile downtown conference room. Mark Jensen arrived early and stacked the stock certificate on the table. Samantha Villiers entered, her magenta cardigan replaced by a gray blazer. She looked diminished, her lawyer visibly cowed.
We're prepared to offer a lump sum payment and a full release of the HOA board. This was a mistake, not a conspiracy.
A mistake doesn't involve buying a competing brewery's stock 6 weeks before bulldozing our proprietary supply.
He slid the brokerage statement across the polished wood. The date of purchase was circled in red.
They have everything. The purchase, the dates, the motive. I can't talk my way out of this.
You orchestrated supply chain sabotage for personal gain. This isn't a settlement negotiation, it's an evidence preview for your criminal trial.
Jensen picked up the settlement offer, glanced at the figure, and tore it clean in two. Samantha's lawyer did not object. There was nothing left to argue. As she left the room, a federal prosecutor was already drafting the indictment. There would be no second chance. The HOA's lawyer delivered the final blow. The association's insurance would not cover a dime of the lawsuit. The denial letter read, "Coverage excluded. Intentional acts by board members void all liability protection." The financial report projected the HOA's total reserves could cover less than 0.1% of the $42 million judgment. A special assessment was proposed, a six-figure levy per household. The room fell silent at the implication. Within a week, the first for sale sign went up. A young couple stood beneath it, their future drained away. They had bought their home believing in community standards. Now those standards had bankrupted them. More signs appeared, dotting the manicured streets. By month's end, every fourth house was listed. The HOA management company resigned. The pool turned green. The playground sat empty. Ridgeline Heights was no longer a luxury community. It was a cautionary tale about the cost of visual harmony. And from her darkened window, Samantha Villiers watched it all fall apart, knowing she'd dragged them down with her. The federal indictment was unsealed at dawn. Commercial sabotage, wire fraud, and conspiracy against interstate commerce. Samantha Villiers arrived in a gray sedan, her face obscured by her attorney, but the cameras captured every step. A reporter shouted over the noise, asking if she regretted destroying a man's livelihood. She did not answer. Inside, the processing was clinical. Fingerprints, photograph, a cotton jumpsuit replacing her blazer. Her mugshot went public within an hour. The image of the HOA chair, glaring into the lens, burned across every screen. The morning paper headline, HOA chair, indicted for brewery sabotage plot. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and the severity of the charges. Samantha would await trial from a federal detention center. Outside, the media dissected her life, her stock portfolio, her HOA crusade, the smirk that launched a legal avalanche. Samantha Villiers, who once commanded a neighborhood from her porch, now watched the world through bars while awaiting trial. And across town, Elijah Royce received a call from Mark Jensen. The trial date was set. Justice was no longer a question of if, but when. The civil verdict came first. The jury deliberated for 3 hours before returning with a finding that left the courtroom breathless. Anheuser-Busch was awarded the full $42 million, every dollar of projected losses, plus punitive damages. Samantha Villiers sat frozen in her chair, her eyes glassy. Then, the criminal trial began. The evidence was overwhelming. The stock purchase, the HOA vote, the gloating newsletter. The jury convicted on all counts in under a day. The judge pronounced a sentence of 12 years in federal prison. Commercial sabotage and conspiracy. The gavel fell like a thunderclap. Across town, Anheuser-Busch summoned Elijah Royce to headquarters. He walked in expecting a handshake, but he got a contract.
You stood with us. We stand with you. Anheuser-Busch is renewing your supply agreement with a 10-year extension, and we're covering the trellis rebuild.
10 years. Not just a contract, a promise that this land will stay a hop farm for another decade.
He picked up the pen, the same one that signed his first deal, and inked the extension on the spot. Cameras flashed, and for the first time in a year, Elijah Royce smiled. The agreement included a rebuilding bonus, enough to replant every acre and modernize the irrigation system. Samantha had destroyed his harvest, but she could not destroy the trust between a farmer and his buyer. On the first Monday after the verdict, a construction crew arrived at dawn to drive the first new trellis posts. Steel, I-beams rose against the sunrise, and for the first time in months, the farm echoed with the sound of progress.
These trellises are stronger than the originals, every post set in concrete, every cable tension for 20-year yields.
Elijah spent the next 3 weeks in the soil, personally planting the first rhizomes in the northern quadrant. He pressed each root into the earth with the same care his grandfather taught him. The crew followed behind, laying drip lines and anchoring vine twine. The rhythm of restoration took hold. Spring rains came early, and within a fortnight, green shoots punched through the soil, thin, delicate, but indomitable.
They'll be tall by August, and this time, no HOA will touch them.
He walked the rows each morning, a ritual that had once felt routine and now felt like resurrection. By summer's end, the hop yard was a green cathedral once more, and Elijah Royce stood in its center, whole. 3 months into her sentence, Samantha Villiers sat on her cot and wrote a letter. She wrote, "I told myself it was about appearances, but I knew what I was doing. I am sorry."
He'll throw it away. He should.
The letter arrived at the farm on a Tuesday, postmarked from a federal correctional facility.
I could leave it unopened. Let the silence speak.
But he opened it. He had to know exactly what she'd say. He read it twice, his face never changing. The words were thin, the remorse too late.
She still calls it a mistake. She still doesn't see it was a crime.
He set the letter on the table and did not write back. There was nothing left to say. Outside, the hop vines climbed the new trellises. The past had been answered. The farm had no more need of it. Autumn dawn mist clung to the trellis rows, and the hop cones hung fat and golden in the low light.
First harvest since the rebuild. Smells like victory.
He stopped at the northern quadrant and brushed a cone with his thumb. The lupulin dusted his fingers gold. Every acre of this harvest was spoken for. Anheuser-Busch had expanded their order before the cones even ripened.
They believed in this land before it was rebuilt. Can't ask for a better partner.
Above him, a hawk circled the updraft. Below, the irrigation drip pulsed a steady rhythm through the soil.
Took a court order and a federal case, but this ground is finally done paying for someone else's spite.
He stood there until the sun cleared the trellis tops, soaking in a quiet he had earned. The farm's heartbeat was no longer the sound of tractors, but the wind through the vines and the creak of healthy trellis wire.
This is what we were fighting for. Not just hops, a place where the land decides what's beautiful.
At the farm entrance, a new sign hung from the old red barn, fresh white letters on weathered wood. It read, "Royce Hop Farms, official Anheuser-Busch partner." Elijah parked his truck and stood before it, hands on his hips.
That sign almost didn't happen. She almost erased this.
He touched the letters, still tacky, and remembered the night he stood in the wreckage. The sign was more than a partnership. It was proof that the land couldn't be stolen by a committee vote. He didn't need to check the newspaper, didn't need to think about Samantha. The farm had its own voice now, and it was speaking in hops and contracts.
Best revenge is a crop that pays. And this one pays for generations.
He drove through the gate, and the trellises swallowed the road behind him. The farm stood, unmovable, exactly as it was meant to.